Okay, we are back, and we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a decision item on the regulatory document REGDOC-2.1.2, safety culture. This is outlined CMD 18 M11 and M11.A. I understand that Mr. Lamar will make the presentation. Over to you.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Bon après-midi aux membres de la Commission. Mon nom est Greg Lamar. I'm the Director General of the Directorate of Safety Management. With me here today are, beside me, Mr. André Bouchard, the Director of the Human and Organizational Performance Division. Beside Monsieur Bouchard is Ms. Karen Owen-Whitred, who you heard from this morning, the Director of the Regulatory Framework Division. Behind us, Dr. Tanya Hewitt, Human and Organizational Factors Specialist, and other CNSC staff who are available to support and answer any questions that you may have. Before we get started, I'd like to disclose an error that was made in the CMD, and it's at two different sections. I'll point you to the executive summary on page 7, and I'll allow you just a minute to get there. It's the same error in both sections, but if we go to the executive summary on page 7, and it's the third paragraph from the bottom, the paragraph that starts if REGDOC 2.1.2 is published. So it says there, CNSC staff anticipate Class 1 nuclear facilities and uranium mine and mill licensees may have to modify existing safety culture assessment and improvement tools. That should, in fact, only reference nuclear power plants, and that is consistent with the content of the regulatory document proposed to you today. So the REGDOC is correct. The wording in the CMD, both on page 7 as well as in section 3, implementation, page 15, inaccurately point to anticipated changes for Class 1s and UMM. So I just wanted to put that errata on the record. Safety culture has been around for over 30 years. As we heard this morning, yesterday, safety culture continues to play a very large part, both in the nuclear industry as well as in every other sector, from transportation, aerospace, healthcare, and oil and gas. Over the years, the CNSC has played a key role in the evolution and maturing of this subject area. Today we're here to open a new chapter in this evolution with the presentation of a draft first regulatory document, REGDOC 2.1.2, Safety Culture. I'll now turn the presentation over to Ms. Owen-Whitred to continue.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Karen Owen-Whitred, Director of the Regulatory Framework Division. We are here today to request Commission approval of REGDOC 2.1.2, Safety Culture, which sets out requirements and guidance for fostering a healthy safety culture amongst licensees. CNSC staff recommends that the Commission approve REGDOC 2.1.2 because it makes a significant contribution to enhance nuclear safety in Canada. A healthy safety culture is key in maintaining the safety of workers, the public, and the environment. The REGDOC is the result of decades of engagement with industry on this important topic. If approved by the Commission, this REGDOC will be an important addition to the CNSC's regulatory framework by clarifying safety culture concepts, adopting a comprehensive perspective that incorporates security culture with safety culture, and by describing CNSC expectations, requirements, and guidance based on a graded approach commensurate with risk. I will now outline today's presentation. I will briefly review the role of regulatory documents and situate REGDOC 2.1.2 within the CNSC's regulatory document framework. Next, we will provide an overview of safety culture and provide the background context for the development of this REGDOC. The presentation then goes into detail concerning the contents of the REGDOC and provides an overview of the current safety culture engagement within Canada's nuclear industry. This REGDOC has undergone extensive and meaningful stakeholder consultation, which is described when we discuss the two-phased public consultation process. Staff will then discuss implementation and oversight strategy for the REGDOC. Finally, we will finish our presentation with CNSC staff's conclusion and recommendation. To enhance accessibility of our regulatory expectations, the CNSC structures our regulatory documents according to the framework shown here. This slide shows where REGDOC-2.1.2 fits within the CNSC's broader document framework. It is situated within Category 2, Safety and Control Areas, in the Management System Series 2.1, which is comprised of 2 regulatory documents. Please note that REGDOC-2.1.1, Management System, is currently under development, which is why we have shown it grayed out on this slide. I will now turn the presentation over to Mr. André Bouchard, Director of the Human and Organizational Performance Division.
Merci, Karen. Bonjour. For the record, mon nom est André Bouchard. I am the Director of the Human and Organizational Performance Division at the CNSC. Over the past 30 years, we have developed a solid understanding of safety culture nationally and internationally in nuclear and other industries. From this slide, we understand that safety culture draws from many elements. This slide highlights a few of these elements. The asterisks represent specific to security culture elements, such as the existence of a credible threat. Simply put, safety culture is how safety is realized in everyday work, from the CEO to the shop floor. Some of these elements are easily observable and measurable, like knowledge and competencies, decision-making, and how information is shared or protected. Other elements are much deeper, less accessible, and often not conscious, such as perception, shared understanding, trust, and respect. Often, we're not aware of how safety culture influences our thoughts, behaviors, and performance. In the next slide, we will look at the interface between safety culture and security culture. This slide is the same slide as previously shown. We can look at the same concepts in other ways to understand that safety culture and security culture are coexisting and mutually supporting. The majority of the framework applies equally to both safety and security. Security culture here is represented in yellow and includes all of the elements within the slide, including 3 security-specific indicators, which are the existence of a credible threat, screening practices, and protecting sensitive information. Safety culture is represented here in blue. It also includes nearly all of the elements within the slide, while giving special attention to security-specific indicators to ensure they are not overlooked nor do not compromise safety, but rather integrate and complement safety elements. When combined, yellow and blue make the color green, which here represent an amalgamation of culture that acknowledge an interplay between safety and security. For example, good communication, clear roles and responsibilities, effective decision-making apply equally to both safety and security. This integrated culture ensures that the performance of people, processes, and technology is both safe and secure. From this point on, when speaking about safety and security culture, we will be referring to safety culture. Now let's look at some events that have advanced our learning in safety culture. Since the Chernobyl accident in 1986, safety culture has been recognized as having a significant impact on safety. For the nuclear sector, this event changed how the industry looked at safety, moving beyond the technical component into the human and organizational aspects. In the next 3 decades, other nuclear events deepened our understanding of safety culture. The 1999 Tokimura criticality accident in Japan brought to light that safety culture is important even in small nuclear settings. In 2002, Davis-Besse had been recognized within the nuclear industry as a top-performing plant, while a leak corroded the reactor head. And Fukushima in 2011 identified systemic cultural elements beyond the boundaries of the licensee's organization. Events in other sectors also contributed to the learning. The Space Shuttle Challenger in 1986 and Columbia in 2003, Deepwater Horizon in 2010, and Lac Mégantic in 2013. Although the expression safety culture was initially applied in nuclear, these events demonstrated that this subject cuts across all industry sectors, from large organizations to small shops, and it goes beyond the technical risks into the human and organizational issues. September 11, 2001 has also been recognized as the pivotal event, increasing attention on security culture. In the end, these events proved beyond a doubt that culture is a key contributor to safety and security. We will now look at how the IAEA has addressed safety culture in its documentation. This slide provides a sample of key relevant documents published by the IAEA since Chernobyl. The documents are listed in a hierarchical order, starting from the Fundamental Safety Principle SF1 at the very top of the IAEA document pyramid. This list contains documents specific to safety culture, as well as documents specific to security culture. Note that security culture documents listed here date back nearly a decade. In 2016, the IAEA published Safety Report Series 83, named Performing Safety Culture Self-Assessment. This document would be referred to as SRS 83 in this presentation. The REGDOC contains a longer, more comprehensive list of relevant IAEA documents on safety and security culture. Now let's discuss what has been done in Canada during that time. In the mid-90s, issues with organizational performance at Canadian nuclear power plant drove the CNSC to move from focusing on technical aspects to look at human and organizational issues. As a result, the CNSC initiated a research project aimed at developing a method to assess licensees' safety culture. This research demonstrated that through a rigorous method, it was possible to assess safety culture. Between 1997 and 2009, CNSC staff conducted 11 safety culture assessments at various nuclear facilities. In 2004, several CNSC's licensees and other industries representatives attended the CNSC Safety Culture Symposium. The CNSC distributed copies of draft safety culture self-assessment guides and communicated its vision that licensees were to engage in such self-assessments. Also, in 2004, reacting to the concerns raised by 9/11, the IAEA instituted the Code of Conduct for Radioactive Sealed Sources, whereby member states are to recognize the importance of fostering a safety and security culture. The CNSC instituted sealed source tracking to meet these expectations in 2006. Now let's look at some oversight activities the CNSC has undertaken. Since 1997, CNSC staff has been actively engaging licensees in several activities, meetings and conferences to promote the fostering of safety culture, trending of event and inspection finding against safety culture framework, capturing observations from site inspectors through daily oversight work, on-site review of licensee self-assessment practices, including reports and action plans implementation. Additionally, CNSC staff report performance to the Commission through license renewals and regulatory oversight reports CMDs. In the next slide, we will look at some of the key milestones in the development of this REGDOC. This slide provides a timeline of key milestones in the development. In 2009, the Commission directed the CNSC to perform a safety culture assessment at Pickering A. The results of this assessment were communicated to the Commission. That presentation, in parallel with the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission publication of a policy on safety culture in 2010, triggered the decision to publish a CNSC policy or document on safety culture. There was also interest in publishing the 2004 Self-Assessment Guide. Consequently, in 2012, the CNSC published a discussion paper for consultation. Even though the Fukushima event took place in 2011, the lesson learned from this event in the areas of safety culture came a few years later. Since 2013, staff increased its effort nationally and internationally to learn best practices and develop standards that would help draft the current safety culture REGDOC. In parallel to this effort, Canada ratified the Convention on the Physical Protection of Nuclear Materials in 2013. This convention identified fundamental principles which includes security culture. In 2015, Canada hosted the International Physical Protection Advisory Services IPAS mission. The mission report contained recommendations suggesting that the CNSC should consider using the development of its REGDOC-2.1.2 on safety culture as an opportunity to explicitly refer to nuclear security culture and its importance, and for licensees should consider formally enshrining the importance of nuclear security culture. The CNSC's response to the IPAS mission was to use REGDOC 2.1.2 to address these recommendations. In October 2017, the Class 1 and uranium mines and mills regulations were amended. One of the amendments required the submission of the proposed management system for the activity to be licensed, which was to include measures to promote and support safety culture. Let's move from the history now of safety culture to what is being proposed here today. Staff is recommending a policy-like approach. The proposal set a goal-setting objective to foster, monitor, and assess safety culture. The CNSC already has this regulatory approach in the way it regulates the principles of ALARA, as low as reasonably achievable in radiation protection. The ALARA principle drives licensees to continuously review their practices with a focus on lowering radiation dose. Regulators' oversight of ALARA reinforce this by challenging assumption and monitoring progress towards this goal. The evergreen goal proposed by this REGDOC lays the basis that support the need for licensees to understand, learn, and improve their organization's safety culture. The REGDOC captured this policy approach, which would bring the CNSC in line with IAEA recommendation for regulators' safety culture oversight practices. I will now turn the presentation over to Dr. Tanya Hewitt for a description of the REGDOC.
Thank you, Andre. For the record, my name is Tanya Hewitt, and I am a Human and Organizational Factors Specialist here at the CNSC. I will now focus on various aspects of REGDOC 2.1.2 safety culture. If it is approved, the REGDOC will engage all licensees in fostering a healthy safety culture in their organizations and enhance the CNSC regulatory framework by providing explicit expectations for fostering, monitoring, and assessing safety culture, including the integration of safety and security culture, and providing guidance and information on what requirements or guidance applies to whom. We will now look at sections of the REGDOC. REGDOC-2.1.2 has 3 main sections. The introduction covers the purpose and scope of the document, as well as relevant legislation and national and international standards. The second section is on fostering safety culture. Fostering safety culture is key in how organizations should approach safety culture. Fostering, cultivating, and nurturing have all been terms associated with safety culture, trying to capture concepts such as introspection and self-reflection, which are core safety culture ideas. The third section is devoted entirely to safety culture assessments. These are significant undertakings for organizations, with a process that includes everything from initial planning to communications to data collection and analysis. Safety culture assessments are important activities for an organization. They can allow a deeper understanding of their workplace, and they can reveal insights and comprehension that would otherwise be very difficult to access. The approach taken in the REGDOC is detailed in 2 technical rationale documents, which are appended to the CMD. The first one, entitled Rationale of Security Culture Inclusion in REGDOC 2.1.2 Safety Culture, will be referred to as CMD Appendix A in this presentation. The second one, entitled Synopsis from Science and Benchmarking Supporting REGDOC 2.1.2 Safety Culture, will be referred to as CMD Appendix B in this presentation. We will now look at the principles that inform the REGDOC. These principles are the foundations upon which the REGDOC was built. These are articulated in the introduction and are woven and referenced throughout the REGDOC. We will talk about each principle in turn over the next 2 slides. All principles are informed by SRS 83. Principle 1, existence. Independent of whether or not an organization is aware of it, ponders it, or has any activities dedicated to it, every organization that has a group of individuals has a culture. Principle 2, influences. The influences on culture are numerous. It is worth noting that the CNSC views workers as anyone who works for or in support of the organization, from the CEO to the corporate staff to the front line. The idea is not necessarily to control and fix, as much as to reflect and understand. Principle 3, complex and changing. In this context, complex refers to relationships between people and processes, people and technology, people and machines, people and other people, all with competing goals and pressures, all while constantly adapting to create the best outcome at a given time. Quoting from SRS 83, the greatest risk in trying to understand culture is to oversimplify it. This principle also stipulates that safety culture changes over time, necessitating ongoing monitoring and periodic assessing. The remaining principles speak to the more operational aspects of assessing and monitoring safety culture. Principle 4, monitoring and assessing to understand. Linked with the changing nature of safety culture in Principle 3, Principle 4 explicitly states that assessing and monitoring is needed to understand the organization's safety culture. Principle 5, the importance of a framework. The framework is the what of safety culture assessments. A framework is typically a set of statements against which the culture is evaluated. These principles form the approach taken to this REGDOC, which has few requirements but is rich in guidance and information. Building on the principles, REGDOC 2.1.2 does have two requirements. Note that these requirements are focused on process, not on outcome. For each of them, the target licensee community is clearly identified. More information on all of these sections can be found in CMD Appendix B. The first requirement, fostering a healthy safety culture, will apply to Class 1 licensees as well as uranium mines and mills. Guidance supporting this requirement starts with safety culture governance documentation. This is a documented commitment espoused by senior management and accessible by all workers that promotes a collective commitment to safety while commensurate with the risk of the activity. Guidance also includes ongoing monitoring of safety culture. This is harnessing existing processes to provide insight into the state of safety culture. The REGDOC provides examples of processes that could be looked at through a safety culture lens, such as any feedback mechanisms and any performance indicators. The maturity model in Appendix B can be a useful tool to help with fostering safety culture. Following a risk-informed approach, the requirement to conduct comprehensive, systematic, and rigorous safety culture assessments at least every 5 years is applied only to nuclear power plants. There is ample guidance supporting this requirement. Section 3 of the REGDOC covers the how to assess safety culture, specifically the process and the data collection methods in some detail. This section is grounded in SRS 83. The goal of such assessments is to provide an organizational mirror and allow deeper insights, self-reflection, and overall learning. The first appendix of the REGDOC is the Safety Culture Reference Framework. Licensees are free to use whichever framework they choose, so as long as a mapping to the reference framework in Appendix A is provided. In the reference framework, the first level is the 5 IAEA characteristics, which have been in use for decades. Below the characteristics in the reference framework is a further level of granularity called indicators, most of which are also based on those of the IAEA. 3 security-specific indicators on the existence of a credible threat, screening practices, and protecting sensitive information are also included in this framework. The maturity model in Appendix B can be a useful tool to help with assessing safety culture. For safety culture, compliance is merely a starting point. Next, we will look at the engagement of various licensees with respect to these requirements. Many Class 1 and uranium mines and mills have or are in the process of developing the basic building blocks of fostering safety culture. This is largely because CSA Standard N286-12, Management System Requirements for Nuclear Facilities, is already in or is in the process of being added to their license condition handbooks. Section 4.2 of this standard explicitly mentions recognizing the importance of and monitoring safety culture through the management system. Power plants use an industry publication on safety culture monitoring panels to realize ongoing monitoring of safety culture. Regarding the safety culture assessment, all power plants have processes to assess safety culture and all specify a frequency. While not a requirement for non-NPPs, some other licensees also have processes to assess safety culture. So the basic building blocks are there. The existing methods and processes can be enhanced by looking to best practice, such as SRS 83, and collaborating across nations and industries. There are a growing number of meetings and documents being written on safety and security culture where researchers and practitioners share best practice. Overall, the Class 1 and UMM licensees are at a good starting point with the basic building blocks already in place. REGDOC-2.1.2 will provide a mechanism for ongoing improvement. REGDOC 2.1.2 is meant to be useful for all licensees, including nuclear substance and Class 2 licensees. For this cohort of licensees, REGDOC 2.1.2 provides foundational information with ample reference to SRS 83, as well as many references to learn more about safety and/or security culture. Additionally, Appendix C on specific behaviors describes how various indicators may be realized in practice. It provides a useful tool for formalizing safety culture concepts. For example, a pilot project in Class 2 has made use of Appendix C already for a subset of licensees, namely isotope production facilities. This concludes the presentation of REGDOC-2.1.2 and licensees' current engagement. We will now cover the extensive consultation undertaken by the CNSC on safety culture leading to this REGDOC. This slide presents the key public consultation activities that were conducted for the first phase, that being the discussion paper on safety culture. The CNSC launched a discussion paper on safety culture in 2012. The What We Heard report outlined the key comments heard through the consultation, and in November 2013, the CNSC decided to go forward with this REGDOC. The development activities for the REGDOC included, for example, technical discussions with the IAEA, other regulatory bodies, industry partners, and with other countries from 2013 to 2016. In September 2016, the draft REGDOC 2.1.2 was published for public consultation. This slide presents the key public consultation activities that were conducted for the second phase, that being REGDOC 2.1.2. The first activity was a 127-day public consultation period on the draft regulatory document. The CNSC received 169 comments from 13 respondents, all from industry and unions, during this period. Most of these submissions opened with expressing the importance of safety culture to their organizations. A face-to-face meeting was held during the public consultation period for commenters to ask questions and help clarify potential comments in January 2017. As a result of the comments received, the CNSC held a workshop June 27th and 28th, 2017, to discuss the draft regulatory document and present proposed modifications to address the comments received. The workshop was attended by 27 external participants, including both industry and unions. The revised REGDOC was sent to licensees November 30th, 2017, and industry sent responses to this on January 9th, 2018. In the following slides, the feedback from stakeholders will be described in more detail. The next part of the presentation examines the 5 key themes raised during public consultation. More information on these topics can be found in CMD Appendices A and B. We will walk through each topic in detail in the forthcoming slides, providing the relevant background and how the CNSC addressed the concern. The first key theme related to the scope of the document. This is not to be confused with the scope of a safety culture self-assessment. The main concern raised was how does a given requirement or guidance apply to a given licensee, or what applies to whom? As a response, CNSC staff modified the document to include clear statements in each requirements section regarding to which licensee the requirement and guidance applies, and for whom it is information. The second key theme related to the REGDOC using a definition and a framework different than those in use in industry. In general, the various industry stakeholders expressed that they were familiar with their own definitions and wanted to keep them. The core aspects of various definitions of safety culture are very similar and share common goals. There is more on this in CMD Appendix B, Section 1.3. Stakeholders were also familiar with and wanted to keep their industry safety culture framework, written by INPO, the Institute of Nuclear Power Operations. Generally speaking, frameworks for safety culture vary across industries, although those used in the nuclear sector are very similar. CNSC staff's response to both these concerns was not to change the CNSC definition or framework to suit the licensee, but to allow the licensee's flexibility to keep their definition and framework. licensees will need to map their framework to the reference framework in the REGDOC so as to ensure that this flexibility still meets the intent of the REGDOC. The third key comment was on the inclusion of security culture with safety culture in this REGDOC. The concerns with the inclusion of security culture were twofold. Firstly, stakeholders perceive that security culture and safety culture are separate concepts, and what is applicable to one concept is not necessarily applicable to the other. Secondly, stakeholders express that the term security culture is not as mature a concept within the nuclear industry as safety culture, so it would not be reasonable to have the same regulatory expectations. Security culture, and why it needs to be integrated with safety culture in this REGDOC, is treated in depth in Appendix A of the CMD. In short, safety and security culture need to coexist and are mutually supporting. For the areas that are in opposition, it is all the more reason to treat both safety and security simultaneously, as the tendency of one area, such as safety and the freedom to share information, will infringe upon the other area, such as security and the need to know. Not recognizing these potential conflicts and not mitigating them ahead of time could lead to problems for either safety or security or both. CNSC staff introduced text to clarify the relationship between safety and security and revise the framework to recognize the similarities in safety and security in most of the indicators, revealing only 3 that are unique to security: the existence of a credible threat, screening practices, and measures to control information. CNSC staff also stipulated in Section 3.2 of the REGDOC, preparing for the safety culture assessment, that licensees may choose to undertake separate security culture assessments from their safety culture assessments. The fourth key comment was on the periodic safety culture assessments. As there were many comments on this topic, the fourth key comment will span 2 slides. Stakeholders expressed that the requirement to conduct safety culture assessments that were empirical, valid, practical, and functional was viewed as excessively quantitative and scorecard-like. Licensees also expressed concern that this approach could be used to compare licensees. As a result, the CNSC staff revised the assessment wording to be comprehensive, systematic, and rigorous, and modified the bullets that help explain what these mean in the context of a safety culture assessment. Overall, the approach was explained to be robust, using both quantitative and qualitative methods to arrive at a credible and trustworthy mirror of the organization, one that is not overly subject to bias or problematic data collection and analysis. The second part of the fourth key comment concerned the frequency of assessments, which at 3 years were seen to be burdensome and impractical, and the submission of a summary report to the CNSC, which was seen not only as a modest administrative burden, but also to adversely affect future assessments. The latter needs further explanation. Safety culture assessments depend upon people feeling safe and secure in sharing their opinions about their organization. This demands a very high level of trust between the assessment process, including how this information will be treated, and the participants. Should this trust be broken and the opinions be taken out of context, there is increased probability that the staff who shared such opinions will refrain from doing so in any future safety culture assessments. Regarding the frequency, CNSC staff changed the requirement from 3 years to at least once every 5 years, with guidance that they should be carried out as operational needs dictate. The requirement to submit summary reports to the CNSC was removed. CNSC staff will continue its current practice of reviewing safety culture assessments on site. The fifth key comment concerned the maturity model. As this needs more explanation, this topic will also span 2 slides. The maturity model is not a requirement for any class of licensee, but is guidance for all licensees. A maturity model is a tool for safety culture self-reflection. It is a set of organizational mirrors by which licensees can gauge where they are as an organization and where they would like to be. Maturity models vary, but the CNSC, following the guidance in IAEA Safety Report Series 11 and IAEA Tech Doc 1329, chose a three-stage maturity model. The first stage is rule-based, where people view safety as purely compliance and do things only because they are told to do so. The second stage is target-based, whereby the organization uses goals and benchmarks as the motivating factors. The third stage is based in continual improvement, whereby every member of the organization is fully engaged and the organization can be described as a learning organization. This slide conveys the key information communicated in Appendix B of the REGDOC. Stakeholders' positions were divided on the inclusion of the maturity model. Nuclear power plant licensees found the maturity model to be unclear. They questioned its value given the safety culture assessment process, implying that it was a separate framework and focusing on strictly pass or fail. They asked that it be removed entirely from the REGDOC. Other licensees and union representatives found that it was helpful and valuable. They wanted it kept in the REGDOC. CNSC staff split the maturity model into two parts. The maturity model in Appendix B, referenced on the previous slide, is recommended for all licensees. The indicator table of the maturity model, which describes what various indicators may look like at all three levels of maturity, was recommended only for Class II and nuclear substance licensees. It is Appendix C of the REGDOC. This concludes the section on stakeholder consultation. I will now turn the presentation back to Andre to discuss implementation.
Thank you, Tanya. Pending approval of the REGDOC, the next steps can be summarized as follows. Publishing REGDOC-2.1.2 safety culture on the CNSC website, which will make it available to licensees and stakeholders. CNSC staff will follow the standard implementation process. That is, Class 1 nuclear facilities and uranium mines and mills will receive a letter requesting a gap analysis and implementation plan. Staff will review and monitor licensee's implementation plan and informing Class 2 and nuclear substances licensee of the existence of REGDOC 2.1.2, bringing to their attention a number of useful references, including Appendix C of the REGDOC, which was specifically tailored for them. We will now discuss how the CNSC will actually oversee licensees' safety culture. Looking to the future, staff will carry on its current practices established since 1997, actively engaging licensee in several activities such as meeting and conferences to promote the fostering of safety culture, training of events and inspection finding against safety culture framework, capturing observation from site inspectors, on-site review of licensee self-assessment practices, including reports and action plans implementation, and reporting performance to the Commission through license renewals and regulatory oversight reports CMDs. I will now turn the presentation back to Karen to conclude.
Thank you. In summary, REGDOC 2.1.2, Safety Culture, is an important document in helping to ensure that Canadian nuclear facilities continue to remain safe and secure. It furthermore helps to ensure that the managers of nuclear facilities and their respective staff continue to be collectively engaged in fostering healthy safety cultures in their organizations. The document builds on the CNSC's extensive knowledge and experience in this area. It is aligned with national and international practices and has been developed through benchmarking, research, and extensive public consultation. The REGDOC engages both those stakeholders experienced with safety culture and those new to the formal topic area in fostering, monitoring, and assessing safety culture. The document assists licensees in seeking continual improvement of safety performance. To conclude, if approved, REGDOC-2.1.2 safety culture will improve clarity and strengthen the CNSC's regulatory framework. Based on our conclusions, CNSC staff recommends that the Commission approve this regulatory document. We thank you for your attention and remain available to answer any questions you may have.